About me, my name is Tudor Riscutia. I'm an independent development consultant in the SAP area, formerly an MSG consultant in the last 3 years. If you've been to the conference, maybe you saw me there. I am an ABAP developer at heart, but I am passionate about UX and cloud native, so the new topics. I'm speaking at various SAP Insight Tech conferences, so these are more community events, and I'm also one of the organizers of such an event, which is SAP Insight Tech in Timișoara, which was already in April this year, but probably they will have another one next year. So this is just for the community. So the topic for today, my topic for today is building the right it before you build it right. So the background is that I've worked a long time in product development, in prototyping. I made a lot of different applications, some of which paid off, some of which didn't. And my team and I, we spent months developing something which later on we threw away. And I was trying to research, how can you solve this? How can you cut this 1 month, 2 months period and make sure you are doing the right thing and that you don't waste time and resources? So the better title for this presentation is make sure you are building the right it before you build it right, because you will waste a lot of money and time. And I would like to start with a small, short mindfulness session. Hope everybody or you are aware what mindfulness is. So please close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. And please keep your eyes closed. And I guess, or I assume, because you're at an SAP conference on technologies, you have something to do with building software. So you probably had some applications which you built which were nonsense or something like this. And I want you to think a bit about what do you think are the ways or the best way to figure out how to make sure you are building the right thing? So what would be this right it? Okay, so now you can open it. Please keep this question in mind. So the question is, what is the right it? So what is this it I'm speaking of? So it is something, an idea you want to have. You have an idea to build something. This it can be anything, software, a product, any kind of idea which you would like to test. It doesn't exist yet, but you would like to make it, but you know it takes a high amount of effort. So time, effort, you need a lot of enthusiasm to build it, and you want to make sure it is something that people would like or something that people would want or ideally buy. Or it can be something which is important for you or is something that you have to do because of your work. But the 2 good acronyms for this it are idea to test is one of them. And my favorite one is innovation to try, because I worked a bit in innovation. And then you will ask why. So why is it important to build the right it? You're all building SAP software. I've built SAP software which nobody used after a while, or somebody clicked twice and said it's good, and then nobody used my features, which took me months to implement. As a developer, for me, it was really cool. I learned a lot of stuff, but ultimately it was a waste. So probably if you're building something or a new product, you should be aware of already that the odds are against you. So probably something will fail. Most ideas fail. And I have 2 statistics here for you I guess it shouldn't surprise you that 90% of mobile apps don't make any money. And the more important one, 4 out of 5 startups lose money for their investors. So if you have an idea, you want to make a startup, I don't want to discourage you. I just want to help you a bit that you have the right idea and it makes sense to do this kind of investment. So by definition, if you don't have the right it, then you must have the wrong it. So this is one wasteful, costly thing you can do, is invest in the wrong it and think that with sheer power, if you work a lot, you will transform it into something which is a good idea. When you start bad, this makes no sense. So we have a short story. The IBM speech-to-text. So a few decades ago, before the internet, IBM was a big company. It was always mostly a big company, but they were famous for 2 things. One of them were their computers, so the mainframe, and the second were their typewriters. So back in those days, not many people were used to using a keyboard or a typewriting. So they were writers, secretaries, and some programmers maybe used it. And people were not used to type, and they were really inefficient. So they were typing like this with 1 finger. It was really slow and painful to do it. So IBM was ideally positioned. They were making computers. They were making typewriters. They said, what if we make this speech-to-text? What if we make this kind of idea? And they got together some people, they started pitching the idea, and people said, yeah, it would be really good. We would definitely want to buy such a product, and it would be something nice. We would like to have it. But Luckily, some people at IBM thought, yeah, maybe it's not the best idea, so let's give it a try. So they got together, some managers, some of the people who said, yeah, they would definitely buy this product. They got them in the room and said, yeah, we've built the first version of this product. And they put them on a table with a microphone, a computer, but no keyboard. And they said, yeah, we built it, please try it. And they started testing it, they started talking to the computer, and the text was magically appearing on the screen. So this was great. But after a while, they started thinking, okay, it takes a long time to put a lot of text into the computer. You are not so fast with the mouth. Second, your throat gets dry. Third, it would create a very noisy environment. So think about if you're sitting in the office, everybody's talking to their computer. And yeah, so if you had some confidential data, it's also a bit hard to type it in when you speak. So at the end of the day, they said, yeah, maybe this is not the best thing. We are not sure we would really buy it. And this was called the IBM speech-to-text experiment. So why was it an experiment? Because they actually didn't build anything. They just put the people in the room, and in the room next door, they had one very good typist who was listening to what they were saying and typing it in the computer. So this saved IBM a lot of time, a lot of money. So building such a technology in the 70s, they had computers, but they were not so fast, not so performing. The algorithms were not there, and yeah, overall it would have been a big total disaster for IBM. But luckily, they saved it by making such a thing. So I have a question for you. Would you say what they did here is a prototype? Or raise your hand who believes this is a prototype of what they made. Okay. Anybody else? Can somebody tell me how would you call it in your organization, company? Experiment research, but when you work in an IT company, you don't do experiments. You go, hey, we need budget for our new experiment. You say, yeah, sure, of course. So you would call it a prototype, and you would probably start investing in the infrastructure and start investing in building the actual thing. Well, there is a really good term which can describe this, and this is called pretotyping. So this doesn't belong to me, there is a website, it's not mine. And this is not a misspelling, so it's actually the E, it's underlined because it's pre, so it's before the prototype, but without the actual investment. So as a small definition, pretotyping is the art and science of faking it before making it. But this is a very efficient tool. So as a disclaimer, most of the content is not originally from me, I collected it while researching. There are two books from Alberto Savoia, who was a Google engineer and the first one who made money for Google with AdSense. And of course, the Lean Startup from Eric Ries. So these three books, if you work in any kind of innovation or anyway, I recommend they are really good to validate ideas and to give you a different perspective. So, pretotyping. Art and science of faking it before making it. So what is the difference between prototyping and pretotyping? Because they are more or less closely together, but there are some different aspects. So prototyping answers the following questions. The most important one is, and what most companies focus on, is can we build it? So in the case of IBM, of course, they could have built this technology because they had the resources and the engineers and everything to do it. Will it work as expected? How much would it cost? Especially in bigger corporations, any kind of experiment, the first question is how much does it cost? And how fast can we build it? Are we the fastest to market with it or not? While in the same time, pretotyping answers only one question. Is it the right thing to build? Does it make sense? And when the answer is yes, then usually you go from pretotyping to prototyping. Another big difference is that prototyping takes days, weeks, possibly months to build, while pretotyping should take minutes, hours, maximum days. And as a short joke, I'm a very big fan of Dilbert cartoons. If you go to dilbert.com, they are going on for years now. It's more or less a corporate world, the stereotypes in the corporate world. So, failing. Maybe you know this picture. Try again, until finally you succeed. It's not always that you try until you succeed, but sometimes you succeed. And this is called fail fast, fail often. So this is a really good technique where you try to validate an idea or a product as soon as possible, that you don't continue investing in this. Then we have from Pretotyping, the so-called law of failure. So this is described in Alberto Savoia's book. And the law of failure is that most new its will fail, even if they are flawlessly executed. And by most, we mean 70 to 90% of its. So of all products and applications, they fail. But how do we achieve failure? So if we are building something that nobody wants, it doesn't matter if we accomplish it on time, on budget, with high quality, and in the case of UI5, with really beautiful design. Nobody uses the application, makes no sense. So achieving failure would be successfully executing a really bad plan. Again, if we are just developers or we have no leadership position, it's not our fault. So at the end of the day, we did our job and we delivered, but still nobody uses our software, so we actually don't do much. So let's say we have an idea. And we have 3 ways to fail. So the first one and easiest is we do nothing with our it. I call it it because it can be anything, any kind of product. This is easy. We do nothing with it. Time saved, no idea, no product. Or number 2, we go for it. So we go heads in, we take the money, we buy the infrastructure if we are building software, and we start making it even if we are not sure it will be a success or not. Number 3, we give it a try. So you assume that giving a try is this prototyping, you test it, but you want to make sure it works. But what does this go for it mean? So here we introduce the evil twin of prototyping, which is called product typing. And by definition, product typing is build it right, even if you're not sure you're building the right it. You want to build the best thing you can do, but you're not sure if it's good. Product typing. So product typing is the way most new products are developed. Maybe you're familiar with this. And it's the reason why most failures are so slow, painful, and expensive. So please don't product type it, prototype it. And how do you prototype something? And here I want to share some techniques. Again, they are from these books, they don't belong to me, but you can research them forward. But these 6 techniques I will show you are really cool tools and something really efficient to help you validate ideas. And the first one is called the mechanical Turk. So the mechanical Turk is the idea to replace complex and expensive computers or machines with human beings. So remember the IBM experiment. Back in the 70s, the artificial intelligence or the machine learning to be able to translate speech to text was not yet there. It was being researched, but it was not implemented yet. And the computers were not able to do it in real time. And this mechanical term, the term comes from the 18th century, which is in the Austrian Empire. Somebody built a machine. It was an autonom for playing chess. And they said it's a machine which you can play chess with. And they displayed it around Europe. And people were playing chess and they were thinking they were playing with the machine. But in reality, there was a very skilled chess player hidden inside this machine and he was maneuvering the stuff. So this is the mechanical Turk. So you fake it before you make it again. And if you want to do it in an enterprise level nowadays, because probably you don't have the budget to allocate people to fake it all the time, Amazon is really nice and gives you such a service. It's called Amazon Mechanical Turk. You can find it at mturk.com. And I like this one, artificial intelligence. So this is a service where you can be either one who requests a service or one who provides it, and you are paid by the usage. So you can just there and, I don't know, any kind of idea, speech to text, there can be somebody who types it in what you're talking about. This can be implemented without by yourself, so you don't have to do it by yourself. So this is a cool technique. Then the mechanical Turk, the second one, and this is really important in the world of UI5 development. I guess, how many are ABAP developers here? Okay, not so many. How many have something to do with UI5, either design or development? Okay, still not so many, but I assume you are aware that UI5 is a growing trend in the in the SAP world, and now most software is built with this UI5 technology. But if you're an ABAP developer, there is a huge set of skills you have to learn to go there. And you should go there, regardless if you're building something which people use or not. But you can still have something to validate if you are really building the right applications. And this is the second technique, which is called the Pinocchio. So the idea of the Pinocchio is to build a non-functional, lifeless version of the product. So basically a mock-up of the UI. And here SAP offers a really nice tool. Maybe some of you know it. It's called SAP Build. This is a tool for mock-upping where they offer it for free with a trial. You can have 5 prototypes, and then you can drag and drop and make an application. Now, I didn't prepare a demo, but I did download a video. So it's a beta. It has no sound, but I will take you through it. So here they have the results of a design workshop, and they build some kind of application. But these mockups, if you send to a user, they don't know what to do with it. So with this nice tool called Build, you can make a clickable mockup out of your paper mockups. So you have here 3 pages. They can rearrange it. So you start with a list, then you go to some details and even more details in this app. And it's really nice. You can do some kind of drag and dropping with hotspots that you can click on the paper. And in the end, you generate like a real application. Of course, you can also build it directly with the UI5 controls. It has a really nice tool with drag and drop. But the fastest way is to start making it by paper, of course, or on a whiteboard or something like this. And you can see now they preview it. And this is an application. So you can click around, and this you get an URL to it, and you can actually send it to some of the end users or the people who were involved in the design. So it's a really cool tool. And even more of this, you can make a study. So you can give tasks to user. Hey, can you click and do some kind of action? And you see if it's intuitive enough or not, that the people can actually make it. You can afterwards translate it to UI5 controls, so you can make it into a real application. And later on, they even offer the possibility to generate the real UI5 application, so you can extract the coding out of it. In my experience, this coding is not really something you would go with because it's generated, but nevertheless, you can build then the backend and have a real application in really little to no time. So this is build.me. If you don't know it, try it out. It's free, and it's a really nice tool to work a bit around. And even if you're not a developer, if you are in business consulting or a functional consultant, you can find a bit the limitations and what you can do with UI5 in terms of controls in the standard. Sherban here will say that you can build whatever you want, but in the standard you have some limitations of what you can build, and you can make a bit of an idea how to structure an application. So I skipped this demo. I wanted to have a live demo, but I skipped it because while I was researching this, I found something even cooler. And how the future of this will look like. It's a company actually from Cluj-Napoca, a startup in the innovation, and they built something like this. So what you see here, they use a camera and machine learning to read what this guy is drawing on the whiteboard and generate HTML coding. So it can understand the basic controls, so some input fields, some text, some checkboxes, and it rearranges it, and it's also responsive. Now, this is not UI5 coding, but it can be. And this is much, much cooler than dragging and dropping there in this application. Yeah. Doesn't matter, but it's much faster what they are doing. And this is a really, I think it's really cool. So this is a startup. It's called Teleport HQ. They are here in Cluj. I was really surprised to see that they are Romanian. I was really proud. Yeah, I contacted the CEO and can I show this video because I really like it. And they have this think to code, it's called. So it's much faster. You go directly from drawing on the whiteboard to having code which you can ideally use productively, but you don't have to go through all the steps as in Build. You can find out more about them on this teleporthq.io. So this is the Pinocchio. The third prototyping technique, and I'm sure this one most of you are familiar with, it's called the minimum viable product, or the MVP. What is the MVP? You create a functional version this time of your product, but you strip down to the most basic functionality. So how many people here built an MVP or some kind of thing that resembles an MVP? Okay, and all of you work in Agile Scrum mode, I assume. Yes, no, yes. But you all know what Scrum is, I hope. Okay. So how do you build an MVP? If you're using Scrum, you build it in sprints, and at the end of each sprint, ideally you have a potential shippable product, whatever. This increment, which you deliver then to the customer, that he can try it out. So let's say the product is a car. I think you know also this picture. The product is a car. So what happens here? You start, you have the first sprint, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. You make the wheels. You ship them to the customer. At which point the customer will say, okay, it's very nice. What am I supposed to do with these wheels? I ordered the car. Okay, we go forward. Next sprint, 2, 3 weeks. We have the next incremental, we have the chassis. Super, we ship it to the customer. Okay, now you got me the chassis, still, what can I do with it? Or I cannot use it. And finally, after the last sprint, let's say, We work hard, we finish the car, and we ship it to the customer. At which point the customer will be, okay, that's nice, this is what I ordered. Why couldn't you send this from the beginning? Why did you have to send me the wheels? So this you might think you are building an MVP, but it's not actually an MVP because the customer cannot use it, and there's no real feedback. So not like this. Probably you know this picture as well. It's from the Lean Startup. Like this, you should build an MVP. Now here people will argue that you cannot convert a bicycle into a car, but this is not the purpose of the MVP, because in the second example, we don't focus on the product, but we focus on the problem. So what does the customer want to do with this car? He wants to go from point A to point B. So the fastest thing, we build him a bicycle, we ship it, he can ride the bicycle from point A to point B, happy customer, good job to the team. The second sprint, we add a motor to the bicycle to make it into a motorcycle because he wants to get faster from A to B. Ship the motorcycle to the customer, gets faster from A to B, happier customer. And finally, we build a car, we send it to the customer. He now can go from A to B fast and take his friends with him. So this is the happiest customer. And this is the way to build an MVP. And here from the Lean Startup book of Eric Ries, the idea is to collect a maximum amount of validated learning, so to collect feedback from the customer with the least effort. So in the second example, we got feedback with every sprint. In the first one, we got an unhappy customer that didn't know what to do with his wheels, which were not connected to anything. And if you're not convinced, I have a really nice quote from Reid Hoffman, who is one of the founders of LinkedIn, that if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched a bit too late. So you already started perfecting something which you don't know if it's good or not. So this is the minimum viable product. The fourth technique, it's called the Provincial. So what is the Provincial? Before launching worldwide, this is in italic here, worldwide can mean anything in your organization, in your area, around the world really, but you build up a software which you ship to everybody, or everybody will use it. You shouldn't do it at first, you should run it on a small sample. So here, if you're working in the SAP, let's say ERP, you know you have these company codes, each country has different legislation, small tweaks here and there. You start building stuff, you start adding new technologies like BRF Plus, and you make rules, and which is useless because you don't know if the software makes sense. So you should focus just on one group of users, ship it to them, and collect feedback and see if it makes sense or not what you're building. And this can be applied also to the list of features. So you can forget about IATN, and if you're building a mobile app, you should do either Android or iOS, not both, because you don't know if people will use it or not. So the Provincial. The fifth technique is called the fake door. So what is the fake door? The idea of the fake door is to create a fake entry for a product. Here it works mostly, it's a really good tool for validating features and see if somebody wants it or not. So if you imagine a web application, you can put a button, click me and see if somebody actually clicks on it. Now, I was thinking about a good example in the SAP world. I thought first about the table and you build some kind of export to Excel. But this is a bad idea because all the SAP users that use SAP GUI or some kind of old technology, they go for the export to Excel. But if you're making something in the S4 HANA, if you're building a new application, like we've seen in the presentation before, there is such a tool called user assistance. It's not yet available really for users, but it's something where you can have a help button as a user, and then you have this guided tour of the application. So you click the help button, okay, I have this application and I want to do some process. And then it takes me, okay, fill this field, fill this one, click here, click there, which is really, really cool. And it cuts out all the training, all this stuff. So it's an efficient tool. But if you build UI5, it should be simple and it should be easy to use. So do you need this user assistance to begin with? And then you can make this help there as a button and see if people start using the application. Do they really need this help? Do you have to write this documentation? If nobody clicks, it doesn't make sense to spend another 1 to 5 days to make all this stuff working. So this is a good technique. And this is, for example, if you're writing a book, let's say, you put a link and say, hey, buy my book from this link. If people click on it, a lot of them, okay, makes sense, write a book, sell it. If not, it doesn't make sense to invest the time and do it. So this is the fake door. And finally, the sixth technique is called the pretend to own. So here, the idea is that some applications, usually in the IT world, the biggest cost is not with the development itself, but it's with scaling the product. So buying, if you need the infrastructure, if you need cloud, if you need some kind of expensive licenses of software, does it make sense to buy it before you know that the application is being used or not? So ideally, you should borrow it or rent it. And because you are at an SAP conference, the best thing is the SAP Cloud Platform trial account, which comes for free, and you can build a lot of apps. You can use a lot of the services. Later today, you will find out a bit about Leonardo. You can do a lot of stuff without paying anything, see if it makes sense, and then you have to pay it if you really want to use it productively, or you don't want your database to be resetted every 2 days. And here, the quote is to be a cheapskate until you know you have the right it. So don't invest in something which makes no sense. So the 6 techniques of prototyping, or some, there are more, but these 6, I think they are most valuable in a SAP context or IT in general. But are there ethical considerations? So is it right to make a fake door? You are not lying to your users. In a way you are. But if you think about how many products you bought at home, you used them once or twice, threw them away, and then regretted ever buying them, or investing in something which is a high effort or money to build something which nobody uses, then you can sleep well and think that, okay, it's all right to fake something and lie to your users to see if they really need it or not. Thanks. So if you do the ethical considerations, you should actually test it and see if people use it or not. So test it. Until now, we talked about you have an idea, you talk to people, and you see if it makes sense. Like in the IBM experiment, everybody said, yeah, we want to buy it, we will definitely need this software, but then it turned out that it would have been a failure and nobody wanted it. So test it, because data beats opinions. So what do I mean by data is what kind of data you collect when you make a prototype. So what kind of metrics, what are you looking for? And there are two important metrics. The first one is called initial level of interest, so an ILI. This is really simple to calculate. The ILI is the number of actions taken divided by the number of opportunities of action offered. So here in a web page, you can see how many people opened the web page and how many people actually clicked on your feature. And then you can make a ratio and you can make a decision if people want it or not. So this is a good one. And if you're writing this book where it's not a repeat business, so people just click once and then never come again, then this one is enough. If you have a really good result on this ILI, then you should write a book or do any kind of product which you only download once and then you don't have the repeat business. But if you do have, so if it's a feature where people have to come again and again, and they only clicked once because of curiosity, but then they will never come and click again, then there is a second metric, which is called the OLI. This is the ongoing level of interest. And this is not a formula, it's more a time-based graph or table. So let's have an example. This is the level of interest, not the initial one, but the level of interest over a period of time. And you can analyze it. And here it's important to look for a trend. So how is it going? Usually you have a spike, people are excited, you announce it, they all click on it, but then less and less and less until it goes to 0. And then you do an acceptance level. This is not there is no rule way to do it. You just have to think about what makes sense for you, for your company, if it makes sense or not. And if you look to a trend, so in time, people don't use it, probably not the best idea to build this product. We have a second example where there is a high peak at the beginning. Things start going down, but then they settle at a steady level, which is above the acceptance level. So maybe it makes sense to build this product. And ideally, the interest always goes up and people want your product, in which case you should go on and build it. So now go make it. As a short summary, I hope you know what prototyping is now. Why is it important? What are some of the techniques? So the mechanical Turk and these ones. What data to collect? And there is such a thing called the Pretotyping Manifesto, because innovators beat ideas. Prototypes beat product types, of course. Doing beats talking. Now beats later. And of course, data beats opinions. So thank you very much. And because Shevan asked me, I will promote his application, which he built. It will be also shown in the digital showroom, which is a feedback application for this conference. We have a QR code and this URL, which you can access it to give feedback of the application. Thank you again. If there are any questions.
Did you try to do a prototype?
Yeah.
With a South customer?
I tried a bit with this build tool.
Okay.
but it was more to see how people use it. They had an application, an old application, legacy, which was really complex, and users were going into this one only once per month to click 2 buttons, but the application had trees and tables and tabs, and they wanted to simplify it. So we built a small showcase and sent a link to some customers and see if they can do it by themselves when they don't need to call support to click this button. They just had to approve something at the end of the month, like a timesheet or something like this. And some of the other ones, like the pretend to own, I would have liked to know it before I built such prototypes where we had machine learning and we had a lot of research, and then turns out we didn't use all the research, we just threw it away.
Or the mechanical Turk.
Yeah, this.
But so for the mechanical Turk, don't you think that the ethical problem is bigger? I mean, there you really pretend to your customer that you have it. What if the customer says that I want to buy it now?
Then you start building it, but the idea is.
So then you tell the developers, okay, let's work all the nights.
You have to make a decision, but it's better to have customers outside your door wanting to buy your products which you don't yet have, than building something and coming out to market 2 years later and nobody wants it. So this is for sure. And think about this with chatbots. There are a lot now people making applications. Also in the SAP world, most of it nowadays, I think they changed a bit with the SAP Copilot, but initially there was this demo with the purchasing, where you talk to your Fiori launchpad and I want to order some material, which in my experience, being in some companies where purchasing department was a room big as this with 30 people all talking on the phone, if one says, hey Alexa, buy this, and they all the room gets blue and they all buy it, it's not the best idea, I think. It's easy to understand to managers, but they say, yeah, it's nice, I understand how it works, but I don't really need such a thing because my guys, they know, they have shortcuts, they know really fast, they do repetitive work, and they don't need a bot to do it. Okay. Any other questions? I made my presentation for half an hour, and then I saw the agenda is 45 minutes. I was not told. Usually at the SAP conferences, it's usually half an hour a talk.
Yeah,
otherwise,
the idea was to be half an hour and a quarter of an hour for purchase.
So, fire. So, if not, thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the day.